Hello. Hello, everyone. Good evening to those of us in Asia, like me, and good afternoon to, I guess, most of you in the UK, maybe Europe. Thank you for joining, for those that are with us. I'm not sure how many of you there are, but I'm happy if you joined in early. My name is Wole Talabi. I'm an engineer and a writer as well. Mostly a fan of science fiction, also a writer of science fiction. And today I will be reading from a collection of mine called Incomplete Solutions. If you like short fiction, novellas, thought experiments, you might like the collection as well. It contains some of my personal favorite stories of mine. So if you'd like to go out and grab a copy, enjoy the story today. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the stories that you read if you do get the book. Okay, so it seems Facebook is telling me there are almost double-digit number of us watching this live, which is good. So I'm just going to start with a bit of a chat, and then I'm going to run a poll so that we can get some engagement going. Let me know if you can ask questions in the comments as well, if you'd like to know anything about me or my work before I begin, and maybe after the reading as well. I'll try to read for about 15 minutes and then proceed to more of a discussion before Andrew Wallace comes in and does his reading from his forthcoming book. So I anticipate that that will be highly enjoyable for those of us present. Okay, so I'm going to set up a question in the poll while we wait for the reading. Try to answer the question honestly. Okay, so I'm just setting this poll up now. I choose to believe I'm doing it properly. And saved. Okay. All right. All right, so I see Shell Bryson is in. Hello, hi Shell. Greetings from Edinburgh. Right, I've never been there. I always wanted to go. I have lots of friends there. I have lots of colleagues that work there as well. Oh well, hopefully once all this lockdown mess is done, I will get a chance to visit. But hello, Shell. So I see the poll is up. Feel free to participate. And then when I'm done reading part of the story, we can engage more based on the number of responses we've gotten from the poll. I can see answers coming in already. Well, Edinburgh is lovely. Okay, I see that is one comment. Yes, I've never been, as I mentioned, but I'm in Malaysia, which is also quite lovely as well. I do like most of Southeast Asia. So if anyone is live today with us from Southeast Asia, say hello. Also, my friends in Nigeria as well, if anyone's online, feel free to say hello as well. Or you know what, anyone from tuning in anywhere from Africa, say hello. Okay, so while we continue waiting and answers come in to the poll, I'll just keep reading from comments. I see, oh, Fiona is in Singapore. All right, I'm in Kuala Lumpur, so right nearby. And there's not much of an SF community that I'm aware of anyway in Malaysia. Zencho does come in to do readings for some of her fantasy work, and I've tried to go to at least 2 events, but I've never had the chance. The timing just never really worked out. So hopefully, eventually, but yeah, not much of an SF community. My SF communities are mostly online. All right. So it seems we're about 6 minutes in to this. I think I'm probably going to start the reading in the next 2 minutes. Let's see where we are with the poll. Interestingly, okay, majority said they would say yes, they would volunteer to be part of a human hive mind. And there's a comment that says, makes me wonder if we're already part of a hive mind of sorts. Yes, but I mean, the more humanity becomes interconnected through technology, ease of traveling, all that, I mean, the internet, share forums, constantly sharing information and opinions and thoughts and feelings, you could argue that we're approaching a sort of pseudo hive mind. But I think part of one of the things I like to explore with my work, and especially with the story I'm going to read from, is even if we are somewhat approaching a sort of hive mind, we don't really have an objective as a group. As individuals, we largely have objectives, things we care about, things we feel, things we want. As a group, our human group systems, families, governments, religions, communities, friendships, they're largely inefficient in terms of achieving group goals. And it's always very difficult coming to a consensus. So I generally wonder about ways of improving that to make us work better together. Because, I mean, as an engineer, I constantly have to work with people to come up with things, share ideas. And I've personally come to believe that there is a lot of value in teamwork. There's just something you get when you have a team that's working really well together, bouncing ideas off each other. They trust each other's opinion. They don't doubt that the other team members have their best interest at heart. There's no suspicion or all that is minimized. There's just so much that gets done so much better. And I spend a lot of time wondering about the pros and cons of enabling that, making it more efficient, faster through technology, through fantasy systems, however that would work. Some of it has been described as Borg fan fiction, or as me trying to whitewash the concept of the Borg from Star Trek, if you're not familiar with the concept of the Borg. But I like to be optimistic. So I think now is a good time to read from my story called When We Dream We Are Our God. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, it's from my collection, Incomplete Solutions. It's the story that closes out the collection. So I'm probably going to read about half of the story, and hopefully you enjoy that half enough and get enough out of it. So without further ado, I will begin. Today, in a small, quiet room near the center of Lagos University Teaching Hospital, I went into the cold darkness of sleep, and when I returned to the warm light of consciousness, I had become a god. I can now see the world through the million eyes of my kin, and I feel with the millions of square meters of our collective skin. Day and night, pain and pleasure, joy and sorrow, the taste of a durian, the warmth of a mother's love, the slow, sludgy feel of mind's slurry against bare feet, the cold feel of a loaded pistol, the explosive ecstasy of orgasm, all are available to me in an instant, in many places, in many forms. They are input data from parts that are now both me and part of me. I see so much. I feel so much. There is so much more me than there was before. And I know so much more than each of us that make up this new and wonderful thing could possibly know with our collective cognition, collective memory. We have gained access to so much more. I know your mother does not approve of what I have done, but I need you to understand why I have done it, why you will eventually do it too. It is, when considered objectively, the natural progression of things. Besides, we have forced our own hand. That is perhaps my fault, at least in part, but I cannot say I am sorry for it. Let me explain. First, the what of things. In the beginning was the void, and the void was a scalar field and quantized particle duality in which all the mass of our universe resided, characterized by the random quantum fluctuation that is fundamental to all things. One such strange and wonderful fluctuation led to a phase transition and the release of potential energy, a glorious and beautiful explosion throwing all matter and energy into violent existence. Galaxies were born, astronomical objects crystallized. The universe groaned with the glory of motherhood. In the protoplanetary disk of dust grains surrounding what would eventually become our own lovely yellow sun, complex organic molecules that would become proteins were woven together as elements sought solace with one another in the cold and darkness of space. Eventually, dust called unto dust, and our planet came to be, its outside cooling to a hard crust like cosmic creme brulee. And when the crust was hard and thick, and the steam had cooled to water, a biogenesis began in a warm little pool filled with ammonia and salts and light and heat. In this primordial pool, individual proteins underwent complex and wonderful changes, the compounds binding themselves to one another and creating independent but connected systems until they became something far more than the sum of their parts. They became first in a chain that would eventually lead to us. Yesterday, I took a long walk through the streets of Surulere, considering the thing I was about to do. I watched a queue of young men in skinny jeans and wide-eyed girls with smooth skin and braided hair file into BRT buses. I observed the portly market women who sell roasted fish by the roadside laugh boisterously as they traded gossip. I saw a family of 4 filled with faithful joy walking back from midweek church service at the Mr. Biggs, right next to Adorade Street, fuel station, to share a meal. I watched the cars zoom and the dogs run and the flies buzz and the grass sway and the rats scurry. I saw the wonderful urban ecosystem that is Lagos, and I knew that I was doing the right thing because this is what each of us, each droplet of self-awareness that makes up the ocean of humanity, has always attempted to do. It is the same thing those first complex organic molecules stranded on a strange dust cloud in the emptiness of space did: connect, become more than the sum of our parts. All our families, our cities, our social networks, our empires, our cultures, our religions, our socio-political structures serve this one purpose: to try to make us more than we are. The process I volunteered to undergo is called hyper-biogenesis. Every hospital globally is now mandated to provide the service to anyone who wishes to participate. Millions have already done so. Millions more do so every day. I would have done it sooner but for you and your mother. This morning, when I arrived at Lagos University Teaching Hospital, there was a crowd of protesters outside. Some of them held up placards imploring people not to give themselves the mark of the beast, not to join what they believe is the coming of the Antichrist. I don't blame them. They're not malicious. They simply do not understand. At least I think they do not understand. I drove past them and parked, checking the meter before walking into the building, saturated with the smell of iodine. I was led to what looked like a nurse's station, where a doctor with a kind smile and a bald head, whose last name was Arogundade, asked me to fill out a form on a tablet and enter my digital signature. The doctor took me to a small hospital bed in the corner of the room and asked me to lie down. Then he took out a syringe and filled it with a clear silver liquid, which I know is called omilegba, from a vial the size of a child's thumb. Such an ordinary place and an ordinary way to undergo such an extraordinary procedure. The fluid was a solution of sedatives within which floated self-replicating nanomachines that would attach themselves to and synchronize with my nervous system, enabling me to access the network and allowing the network to access me. Close your eyes, Dr. Arogundade said to me, his voice so cool and reassuring. I knew then that he had already undergone the procedure. He injected the clear fluid into the thick, dark vein that runs through the crook of my arm. The pain was sharp and delicate, and behind the veil of my eyelids, I drifted off into a deep sleep. When I returned to consciousness, I had been extended. Do you remember when I first showed you how to swim? Undergoing hyperbiogenesis is a lot like that. It's uncomfortable at first. The sensation of being in the world is still familiar, but changed fundamentally. But then you get used to it once you establish a rhythm. In water, you need a breathing pattern. In the system, you need a thinking pattern. I am a node in a vast biological supercomputing system with its own emergent consciousness, of which I am a part, but which remains separate from mine. It feels like there is a dim light in front of me which I can reach into and enter to immerse myself completely into the system, or pull back from and remain on the edges of, receiving and processing data in the background. When I'm running as a background process, I am mostly me. When I'm fully immersed, I am mostly we. It is easiest for me to be we when I am asleep. It allows my mind to become entirely part of the larger system without interfering with my ability to walk or talk or laugh or drive to the flat that I now rent in Lekki since your mother began insisting on a divorce. In this way, we take advantage of the rotation of the earth. This is the larger rhythm. It is always night somewhere, and so some of us are always sleeping, always dreaming. When we dream, we are our God. We can think as one, with an effective brain the size of a small city and growing, eliminating the last and most fundamental border between humanity, our minds. We can herd the meandering billions of inspirations and observations and patterns that enter us like so many cattle on an infinite plain. Forgetfulness might as well not exist for us. Miscalculation is becoming a statistical impossibility. The absolute grandest of ideas accrete in our thought places and grow bigger and bigger and bigger until they are a decision to be set in motion or a revelation to be made to any who can understand. We synthesize the compound to inhibit the formation of cancerous cells within half an hour of setting our collective mind to the task. We completed workable schematics and implementation plans for a Dyson sphere in less than 47 hours of singular focused thought. The only reason we have not completely revolutionized life as you know it upon this planet is because we are presently occupied with the larger thought. When we dream, we are synchronized fully into one being, the being that can think more efficiently than any other being that has ever existed on this planet, save one. And that brings me to the why of things. Somewhere in one of the early sun-kissed desert civilizations birthed by the fertile Upper Nile and expanding east, an enterprising person strung pebbles upon a frame and used them to perform elementary computations. This early data processing ancestor, the abacus, served mankind loyally for centuries, until thousands of years and miles away from its birthplace, the fair-haired Blaise Pascal delivered into the world a contraption of interlocking cogs that could add and subtract decimal numbers. Pascal's machine begat Leibniz's machine, which was the first of such machines to have memory. The dour and obsessive Charles Babbage joined the brilliant Augusta Ada Byron, Countess of Lovelace, in computational matrimony, and the fruit of their union was the first programmable computing machine. Herman Hollerith brought into this world his tabulator, the first product of the company that would come to be known as IBM. Wild ideas and young technologies lay with one another. Devices gestated. Algorithms incubated. Turing's papers concerning such machines became scripture. The tabulator begat Bush's differential analyzer. The vacuum tube children of the differential analyzer were thus: the Atanasoff-Berry computer, Harvard Mark I, Colossus, ENIAC, EDVAC, and EDSAC. EDSAC wed the petite and delicate microprocessor and birthed MIT's Altair 8800, the father of Apple I and Apple II, which became a mighty computational power upon the earth. But the most successful of their children was Microsoft's personal computer, which spread upon the planet like a plague, until the stoic and hard-chinned Tim Berners-Lee combined the power of computer networks with information sharing protocols. Thus was born the Internet, a computational congregation of electronic, wireless, and optical networking technologies. A month ago, just a few minutes past midnight, West Africa time, on a rainy Thursday evening, the Internet disappeared. Dial-up for computer modems, fiber optic, Wi-Fi, satellite, and cell phone technology. It didn't matter. No one could access anything, anyhow, anywhere. I was in Ile-Ife at the African Philosophy Society's annual conference with your mother when it happened. That was the night we left you at Grandma's house. The night she gave you too much moi to eat and you got a bad stomachache. Do you remember it? You complained about it when we called to check in on you, so I sang you a song about the tortoise and the cat. By the time the Internet disappeared, you'd already been sleeping for a couple of hours. But your mother and I were still awake. She asked me, confused, "Bode, is your own Wi-Fi working?" I told her no, mine isn't working either. And it took 6 tries for me to get through to reception. When I did, the surprised and haggled young lady on night duty pleaded with me to be patient because 8 other guests had just made the same complaint, but their support technician couldn't find anything wrong with the system. And then, just as suddenly as it had gone, the Internet returned. The following morning, the news came in. The shutout had washed over the planet in a wave starting from Beijing and traveling east, as though it were an electronic longitude-length tsunami that lasted 12 minutes. Confused eyes had looked up from unresponsive screens. Angry fingers had bashed against disobedient keyboards. Everything online had gone, and then suddenly come back. The worldwide connection had broken and then apparently healed by itself. For 2 days, no one understood what had happened or why. And then it happened again. The second shutout lasted 3 hours. This time, there was rampant speculation. Terrorist attack? Armageddon? Alien invasion? No one knew. 3 days after the blackout, everyone on the Internet was redirected to a plain white web page with only the following words written on them in stark Arial font. I am. Did you make me? All right, so I'll stop my reading there for now. I hope that was interesting to you. I hope you enjoyed the story and my reading of it. If you'd like to complete reading the story, a version of it is online at Apex Magazine So you can read that for free. You can also read it in my collection, along with 19 other stories, including a novella. So feel free to make any comments. Let me know what you thought of the reading, and let me take a look at the poll. Okay. So right now on the poll, 60% of you say maybe you would volunteer to be part of a human hive mind. And 20% say both yes and no. I actually do think I would sit with the maybe group. It really depends on how the hive mind works. In the story I just read, When We Dream We Are Our God, I took a somewhat optimistic view of things, that that we would strive to do things that we were incapable of doing before. We would think bigger than what we currently are doing, which in a sort of way we've been tending towards for much of human history, slowly, inefficiently, with a few stumbles here and there. We're generally tending towards doing better, despite how things can seem sometimes. I do believe that this is quite possibly the best time to be alive in human history, generally speaking, in terms of healthcare advancements, in terms of scientific knowledge, in terms of just knowledge in general. Maybe not so much in some other ways, social ways generally, but yeah, I think maybe I would volunteer to be part of a human hive mind, depending on how it was set up and how optimistic I'm feeling at the time. Hopefully things get better in the world around us. Okay, so let's see if there are any questions. Oh, we do have some questions. Okay, sorry, I didn't see them earlier. Okay, so there's a question. If someone revealed to you that you're already a hive mind and didn't know it, would you volunteer to be disintegrated into your constituent agents? Ooh, so this is the matrix question, isn't it? Red pill, blue pill. I mean, in a sort of way, it reminds me of that sort of choice. If you were part of a hive mind and didn't know it, would you volunteer to be disintegrated? I would like the option to, which is why in my story, I wrote about the hive mind as being a sort of system you can pull in and out of, and moderate how submerged you are in the system. I think human beings would crave that choice. I think it would be important to have the option. I would definitely be curious what it felt like to be disintegrated from the system, but I might want to join the system back depending on what I find on the other side. Okay, I see there is a recommendation. If I visit Edinburgh, I should check out Shoreline of Infinity. Okay, I will. And Chimera Festival, definitely. All right, some comments. Thank you for your comments about beautiful writing, very poetic. Thank you very much. I try my best. I'm an engineer with, I'd say maybe with half a poet spirit, maybe 10%. And then there's a comment from Susan Gray, who has always been fascinated by hive minds. And you wrote a play on it. Okay, I'm curious. Could you share the name of the play? I'm very curious about that. Yeah. But yeah, maybe it is easier to imagine if we're singular agents first, and then we switch into a hive mind. I agree as well. So we are social animals. Durkheim posited a kind of species mind to explain the inexplicable trends in human behavior. Yes, so thoughts like that are actually part of what I try to apply in the story, is the bigger trends in human behavior. And if those trends were made known to us, would we try to control them? So yeah, that is a very interesting comment. Let's see. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so maybe being a hive mind can be more like a realization than a feeling of creation. Oh, that's a good point of view. I like that. Coming to realize and having a sense of being part of something bigger, rather than a sense of creating something physically. It's a very interesting point. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your comments. And for those of you that want to hear more, hopefully I will be able to, maybe I'll do another one of these and finish the story. And someone posted the link to the story online, so thank you very much for that. Okay, I might just take one more question because I'm sure Andrew Wallace is waiting to go online as well, and I'm sure you guys want to hear from him. Okay, so can you tell us a bit more about the process of writing the story and how your thinking about its themes has developed since? The process of writing the story actually was partly inspired by The Grapes of Wrath. I reread The Grapes of Wrath recently, about 4 years ago, and I just completely loved the in-between chapters and the way they were written in this kind of ecclesiastical, almost biblical style. And it does give you a sort of religious reference, which does make you think of bigger things. And that kind of dovetailed into the style of the story. The idea of a hive mind has always been with me. So I think the two topics just merged well with each other. And yeah, I kind of just took my time writing it. Once I had the idea to try to use the Grapes of Wrath ecclesiastical style with the concept of a hive mind, then it was just a matter of framing out the way I wanted the story to go in the form of a letter from a father to a son. And that kind of took a few months to all write out. I will mention I consider this story a bit of a companion piece to another story I have in the collection, called The Harmonic Resonance of Ejiro Anabori, which is also about a kind of hive mind as well, but not from a technological point of view, but essentially it's induced by an external factor. In this case, it's an alien artifact that is found and has this property of linking minds together. So yeah, I'm still thinking about the themes, and they haven't really changed much since I thought about it. I do hope we have a way to make humanity at large, for lack of a better term, more efficient. I hope it comes to pass the way I've imagined it, and that there are no evil corporations that take over, as Shel Bryson commented, which is always a risk in these days of capitalism. The drive for profit could easily subvert that kind of technology into something I don't want to think about, something very dystopian. So yes, thank you very much for joining this reading. I see the play is called Some. Excellent, I will check it out. And I think here is a great time to end my live video. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much for enjoying the reading, and I believe Andrew Wallace will be online shortly. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.